Okay, good morning, students. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in my last class, I think we were discussing about the faults and faults and other things, is it not? So today we shall continue our discussion on the different aspects of the faults, and with which we are going to complete the first topic of the third module. Okay. So these are very important. In examination, it may appear for 5 marks or for 10 marks or even for your 50 marks or 15 marks also. So you have to be very careful. Okay. Please pay clear attention to all these things. Okay. So now, what are the fault classification and the terminologies? We shall look at it. Okay, faults. What are these faults? These are the fractures that have movement parallel to their plane. Okay. If the plane is in one place, before faulting it was in this way. After faulting, what happens is it has moved downwards along the plane itself. Okay, so these are usually caused by the seismic activity, by the earthquake waves or the seismic activities. These faults are being produced. Okay, so now this is very important. Understanding faults is very useful. Where in the design for long-term stability of dams, bridges, buildings, and power plants. The study of fault itself helps to understand the process of mountain building. Okay, so coming to the understanding of faults, it is very important. Why? Before or prior to the design of any bridges, structures, reservoirs, dams, anything, they will have to have a very comprehensive idea on the knowledge on the geology of the area. Okay, they have to understand the geology of the area. What are the geological components? What are the geological rock types present in that area? What are the structures that are present in the area, like the fault or the fold or the joint or the unconformities? If all these things are present in that particular area, then it is usually very difficult for you or any civil engineer to build any structure. I think you might have heard the name of Koina Dam in Maharashtra. Okay, Koina Dam in Maharashtra is built across a fault plain. So in the year 1960 and also in the year 1990 and also in the year 2016, 1960, 1990 and also 2016, all these 3 years, that Koina reservoir has suffered a very big fault plains. Okay, there was a severe earthquake that occurred in that area, and it is built on a fault plane itself, and it has resisted the action of the fault, but the damage that has to be occurred has occurred. Okay, you cannot stop the damage due to the faulting, but the level of destruction is on a very small scale. Okay, so that's why what they say is, before they build any dam or structure, you have to have a very good understanding on the geology as well as the structural aspect of that area. Okay, so the faults may be small to very small to hundreds of meters or even a few centimeters in their length. Okay, their outcrop will be having a knife sharp edges or a fault shear zones. Okay, so these fault shear zones are consisting of a series of interleaving anastoming brittle faults or small faults or the crushed rocks, and also the zones which are composing of the different rock types. Coming to the parts of the fault. So faults do have, as fault is having many parts, the fault is also having many parts. Here example, you can see a small example here, how the faulting has occurred and how there is discontinuation in the strata. Okay, so this strata usually should be here, but because of the faulting, it has moved downwards. So there is a breakage in the continuity of the structure or the rock type. It has moved down. Okay, so initially both of the planes were in the usually in the same area. Usually both the planes were in the same area, but due to the faulting, one plane has moved down relatively with the other plane. Okay. Now coming to the parts of the fault, as fault is also having the parts, fault do possess some of the parts. For example, fault plane, hanging wall, footwall, slip, dip slip, strike slip, oblique slip, and the net slip. Okay. Fault plane. What is a fault plane? Fault plane means it is the surface okay, fault plane. So it is the surface that has movement, the movement has taken place within the fault. On this surface the dip and strike of the fault is usually measured. Okay. Next is hanging wall. Hanging wall is a wall in which the rock mass is being resting. The rock mass resting on the fault plane is called as a hanging wall. The footwall is the wall that has the rock mass beneath the fault plane. So whenever the plane moves downwards or upwards, then one becomes the hanging wall and another one becomes the footwall. Okay. Slip is that which describes the movement of the fault parallel to the fault plane. This is the slip of the fault. Okay. So if this is a fault plane, then this is the slip usually. It describes up and down parallel to the dip fault.
ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಗಾರ್ಡ್ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಗಾರ್ಡ್ ಅಂತ ಡಿಸ್ಪ್ಲೇ ಫೋನೇ ಓದಂಗ ಅದ್ ಬಿತ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹಾಕ್ಸ್ಕೊಳತಿರ್ಲಿ ಹಂಗ.
Okay. So coming to the dip slip, it describes the up and down movement parallel to the dip direction of the fault. Strike slip applies where the movement is parallel to the strike of the fault, and oblique slip is a combination of strike slip and the dip slip. So coming to the net slip, it is a true displacement, that is total amount of motion measured parallel to the direction of the motion or the movement. Okay. So coming here, you can see here, this becomes the hanging wall, this becomes the footwall, this becomes the fault plane, that is the movement of the plane which is parallel, usually parallel to each other. This is the fault angle. Okay. So the arrows shows the directions of the movement. Coming to the separation, separation means it is the amount of apparent offset of a faulted plane surface which is usually measured in specified direction. Okay, there are strike separation, dip separation, and the net separations. Okay, so here you can see this is actually the two blocks which were jointed together to one another. Now one block has moved downwards. Okay, so this becomes the hanging wall and this becomes the footwall. This becomes the hanging wall and this becomes the footwall. So both the hanging wall and the footwalls, what happens is it gets separated. Okay, so the amount of displacement with respect to x-axis, that is horizontally, is called as heave. Is called heave. This should be here. This I will be actually portion. This will be jointed here. But due to some earthquake waves or anything else, the rock has broken down and moved downwards. Okay, so this usually the horizontal component along which the rock has moved is called heave, and the downward displacement of the fault or the rock usually called as a throw. Okay, separation means the amount of apparent offset of a faulted surface that is measured in a specified direction. Okay, which is measured in a specified direction. There are strike separation, dip separation, and the net separation. Heave and throw. So the horizontal component of dip separation measured perpendicular to the strike of the fault is called as heave, and also the vertical component measured in vertical plane containing dip is called as a throw. Okay, heave and throw is usually displaced in this way itself. Okay, so coming to the fault types, you can see different types of fault: normal fault, the thrust fault, the strike slip fault, or the sinistral, that is dextral and sinistral, normal, reverse, everything like this. Okay, you got two types. One is a dip slip faults and the oblique slip faults. So coming to the features of the fault surfaces. Now, what are the features of the fault surfaces? So very important ones are the grooves. Grooves means which are parallel to the movement of the direction. Okay, you can see the groove-like structure which are being present here, parallel to the surface of the movement. So next one is the growth of fibrous minerals. So fibrous minerals means you can see here how the fibrous minerals have been grown because of the activity, that is the shearing activity. Usually what happens is both the rocks are rubbing against each other. Both the rock surfaces are rubbing against each other, which in turn creates friction on both the surfaces where usually the rocks are being rubbed against one another. Okay, so those frictions are usually attributed to the growth of the new fibrous minerals. Okay, so next are the silicon sites, which are the polished fault surfaces. So one side of the fault, because of the rubbing action, usually gets cleaned or it gets polished. Okay, so and also there are small steps that are being created. Okay, these small steps may be also be used to determine the direction of the movement and also direction of the movement of the opposite walls. Okay, slicken lines or slick lines usually record only the last moment event in the fault direction on which the fault has moved. So these are the very important features on the fault surfaces. Now, if in any area a fault has occurred, means these are the features by virtue of which you can identify the surface along the fault direction in which area the fault has occurred. Either there will be some groove-like structures being formed, there will be growth of new fibrous minerals, there will be some chicken slides, or even there may be some small steps that are being created. Okay, as you got staircases, in the same way there may be small the steps being created by the action of the faults. Okay, so grooving structure and also the new growth of new fibrous minerals are very important, because sometimes silicon sites may not be visible, as you see in the case of Chitradurga. If you have visited Chitradurga, the Chitradurga fort do possess a small fault. Okay, the Chitradurga fort, usually it has got a fault where means exactly I can precisely tell near the place of Akatangi Honda. Okay, you got Akatangi Honda over there. There a small fault is being present, but now as time is progressing, you cannot find the fault. Okay, you cannot usually find the fault because it is very highly difficult for you to find them because of the time elapsement. The silicon sites has been removed The small steps also has been removed, but you can find very beautiful groove-like structures. If you walk along the bund or the road that they have constructed, you can find very beautiful groove-like structures and also the growth of new fibrous minerals. Okay, so coming to the classification of the faults, there are three important types of faults that are being classified by Anderson in 1942. One is a normal fault, another one is thrust fault, and another one is a wrench fault or a strike slip fault. Coming to the different types of faults, because of the shear stress, that is, the waves move parallel to one another, the rock types also are moving against one another. Okay, even the joke falls is also because of the fault that has been created in the Sharavati valley. Okay, otherwise there was no faulting structure, means there would have been no joke falls. Because of the faulting activity, the shearing activity in the Sharavati valley, there is creation of the beautiful falls of the joke falls. Okay, so coming to the shearing, that is movement of the earthquake waves parallel to one another, which results in the rubbing of the two planes in the first case. Also, the compressional stresses. What happens in the compressional stresses? You can see both of them are compressing against one another, where one block may move against one another, on one another. This block may move on this block. Okay, the combination of both compressional stress and the creates, what happens is, it may create a lake structure. You can see here, because of the compression stresses, one block has moved upwards, which creates in the formation of lake. Okay, Lake Michigan in America is attributed to be formed from a fault itself. Okay, so you can see when two blocks go, when against two blocks, one block goes downwards, there is formation of two footwalls, and two hanging walls, footwall block and the hanging wall blocks. So the uplifted structure will be the horst, and the down thrown portion will become the graben. The uplifted portion is usually called as the hanging wall, footwall block is usually called as horst, and the down thrown portion is usually called as a graben, that is called as a rift. Coming to the normal fault. So normal fault is a fault where the hanging wall has moved down relative to the footwall. Okay, in a normal fault, what happens is the hanging wall has moved downwards compared to the footwall. It consists of two important points. One is graben and a horst. In a graben, what happens is, it is a block that has been dropped down between two parallel normal faults which dip towards each other. Horsts are the ones which consists of two parallel normal faults that dip away from each other, so that the block between two faults remains high. Listric are the ones which are the normal faults that frequently exhibit concave-like structure or the geometry, so that they exhibit deep near the surface with the flattened with the depth. So where normal faults are being found is in areas where extensional regime is being present, or the extreme temperatures are being present, you can find the normal faults. Coming to the normal fault, you can see this is an example for a normal fault. You can see the hanging wall has moved downwards relative to the footwall. You can see here, this is the hanging wall, this is the footwall, it has moved downwards. Only after the fault has been occurred, you can find whether which is normal fault and which is the footwall. Here, this is a normal fault, in which the normal fault, the hanging wall has moved down relative to the footwall. Okay, so that's why you can find this strata move downwards. Coming to the thrust fault, in thrust fault, what happens is the hanging wall has moved upwards compared to the footwall. Footwall remains at that place itself. Hanging wall, usually in a normal fault, it comes down. But in a thrust fault or a reverse fault, the hanging wall moves upwards. Okay, so dip angle will be less than 30 degree or equal to 30 degrees. But in case of a reverse fault, these are the thrust faults which have a dip angle of more than 45 degrees. Okay, if it is less than or equal to 30 degrees, then it is called as thrust fault. If it is more than or equal to 45 degrees, then they are called as a reverse faults. Okay, so here you can see the thrust fault, how exactly it has occurred. It has moved upwards compared to the foot wall. The hanging wall has moved upwards here. Okay, so here also you can see. Coming to the strike slip fault. Strike slip faults are the ones where the movement is being along the strikes. That is means the movement is parallel to one another. Okay, so the very good example are the San Andreas fault of America, where you can find the movement which is parallel to each other. There are two types of the strike slip faults. One is a right lateral strike slip fault, which is dextral in nature, when the side opposite to the observer moves to the right, and left lateral strike slip fault sinistral, where the side opposite to the observer moves to the left. Okay. Next one is a transform fault, which was later on defined by Wilson in 1965. It is a type of a strike slip fault. It forms due to the differences in the motion between the lithospheric plates. As you know, the lithospheric plates is being always under movement. So this transform faults are also formed due to the movement of the lithospheric plates. So they are basically occurring where type of plate boundary is transformed into another. Okay, one type is transformed into another type, where the main types of the transform faults are the ridge, that is mountain, ridge and arc, mountain and or continent and the ocean, and the ocean and ocean. Ridge means mountains or continental, arc means the oceanic plates. Ridge means it is two continental plates. Ridge and arc is one is the continental plate and another one is a oceanic plate. Arc means it is called as sea to sea plates or the ocean to oceanic plates. So are there any other types of faults? Yes, apart from these three types, you have got other types of also. Inequalon faults, where the faults are approximately parallel to one another, which occur in small unconnected segments, and sometimes they will be overlapping on one another. Okay, so next they have got a radial faults that are converged into one point. You got concentric faults that are concentric to one point, and also bedding faults, that is bedding plane faults, which occur subparallel or parallel to the orientation of the bedding planes. So now what are the criteria for faulting? If you have to find a faulting, there should be some criteria which should be present before we say faulting has occurred. So repetition or omission of the units. Okay, so units may get repeated, or sometimes one strata or the rock type may get dissolved, or it may be removed due to the movement. Removed means it will get submerged within the earth surface. Okay, it may go beyond or beneath onto another foot plane or the hanging wall block or the foot wall block. Okay, displacement of a recognizable markers like the fossils, color, composition, texture, etc. Truncation of the structures, that is the bending of the structures or the rock types. So occurrence of fault rocks like the mylonites, cataclastic or both of them. Presence of S or C structures, which are related to the porphyric cluster and other evidences of the shear zones. There will be numerous of abundant of veins, as we have seen the veins in the jointing structures, that is Those veins may be enriched in silica or other minerals along the fractures, which indicates the faulting. The drag units, which may be pulled to be appear to be pulled into fault during the movement. Reverse drag, that is district normal faults, slicken sites or the slicken lines along the fault surface, that is the rubbed or polished surface on the fault plane, and also the topographic characters such as drainages that are controlled by the faults and the fault scraps. Okay. Coming to the fault mechanics, how exactly it occurs, you can see here. Orientation, that is alpha 1 greater than alpha 2 greater than alpha 3. Okay, it occurs in the three different directions also. Okay, if it occurs in compressionally, it may occur as a reverse fault. Okay, if it occurs around vertically, then there may be normal fault. If it occurs in the shearing, there may be transform faults. Now with which we complete the structures. If you have got any questions, you can ask me now. If there is no questions, we can continue discussion next class. All of you drop in your attendances. We shall continue discussion next class. Thank you.